Hello students, welcome to the 7th lecture of this course chemistry, which has code CH101 for the odd semester and CH201 for the even semester. And this is G. Chakraborty, assistant professor from the Department of Chemistry, and you are watching this lecture for the chapter which is called periodic properties. Okay. Now, as far our knowledge goes, that periodic properties chapter is present in none other than the module 1, which is the inorganic chemistry of the BTech syllabus, right? Now, as you can see, this is the part 3 of this chapter, which is called periodic properties. That means we have already come across the two parts, part 1 and part 2 of this periodic properties. Okay, so let us have a quick recap about what we have seen in part 1 and part 2, and then we'll move for the part 3, that is this particular lecture. Okay. Now, if you see what we have done in part 1, you will remember, I guess, that part 1 was none other than the Duverner's law of triads, the Dulin law of octaves, Mendel's periodic table, and the modern periodic table. So what we can say in a single word, that part 1 was the history of discovery of the periodic table, that how periodic table was discovered, how this total thing came into the mind of human beings. All this have been discussed in part 1. Okay. We started from Duverner's law of triads, then we have seen what beautiful work has been done by Duverner, since he was the first person to think about the fact that elements can be grouped in certain order. Right now, he has grouped in order of 3 members, which is called a triad, right? So basically, this 3-member group is none other than a triad, which Duverner has established, and hence Duverner's law was called Duverner's law of triads. Okay. According to his law, if we take average of the first and last element, the atomic weights of the first and last element will get the atomic weight of the middle element. Okay. So after Duverner, there was Newlands, who has said that after every 7 elements, the 8th resembles the property of the first. Then came the big scientist Mendeleev with his big work, the Mendeleev periodic table, the first ever periodic table that people can say. Okay. Now, what was the benefit of that periodic table? The simple benefit was this table contained a large number of elements. Okay. The concept of groups and periods was introduced for the first time, and it was well defined that what is a group, what is a period, and why the elements have been grouped in such a way. That also was discussed by Mendeleev. Also, the periodic law for the first time was formed by Mendeleev only. So huge work was done by him. Okay. But there were certain problems in the Mendeleev periodic table, because not all elements were discovered at that time, and there was a huge problem regarding isotopes. So finally, Mendeleev periodic table did not sustain. Okay. And in place of that, different periodic table came, which is sustaining till today. That is the modern periodic table, or the periodic table that was done by Henry Moseley. Okay. Now, why this particular periodic table is very important, why the people has taken it for granted? Yes, this is our periodic table. This is what we want to know, what we want to use. Why it is like this? If you uncover the fact, you will come across that this total thing, this periodic table, why it is so much popular? Because it does not have any problem, number 1. Number 2, it is based on atomic number. Now, if whenever we are doing something in terms of atomic numbers, then the whole problem limits actually. Now, it is not Mendel's fault that Mendeleev has used atomic mass. From the previous time only, atomic mass was considered. At the time of Moseley, X-ray diffraction came into being, and it was easy to understand, right? So this we people have been discussing in the first lecture. That is the first lecture, not first lecture actually, part 1 of the periodic properties. It is the 5th lecture actually of this particular subject, right? This particular course. Okay. After this, in the sixth lecture, we people have seen that uh, what the different periodic properties are. We beautifully have seen what atomic radius is, what ionic radius is, how the ionization enthalpy can be defined, what is electronegativity, what is electron gain enthalpy, and how they vary across a group or along a period. These people have seen. Now let us see what we are having in this lecture today. As you have seen, this is the part 3 of the periodic properties, and we are having 4 more important points, that is polarizability, oxidation states, valency, and effective nuclear charge. Okay, so we'll discuss about this 4 very important topic about this particular moment and their variation in the periodic table. Okay, so let's start the today's topics. We will start from the first point, which is called polarizability. Now, what is polarizability? The ability to polarize something is called polarizability. Okay, polarizability means ability to polarize something. Now, what does that mean? So it's clearly written, polarizability allows us to better understand the interactions between non-polar atoms and molecules and other electrically charged species such as ions, polar molecules with dipole moments. Neutral non-polar species have spherically symmetric arrangements of electrons in the electron clouds. So let us come again. It shows us to better understand the interactions between the non-polar molecules and charged species. Fine. Neutral non-polar molecules have spherical symmetrical arrangement. In presence of electric field, their electron can be distorted, right? So we'll see, it is not below, it is side. The ease of the distortion is called polarizability of the atom or the molecule. Now what we can see, this is a neutral species. As you people can see, it is completely round in shape. Okay. Now what happened? Suddenly we have inserted this particular plus as the neighbor of this particular dipole. What happened? Due to this plus, the whole minus that is present in this particular thing, it came at this particular side. Automatically the plus will come to the other side. So if plus and minus have came in this particular sides, right, they were distributed here, right, total thing was distributed here, but here it is divided as one side is minus, another side is plus. So it is called ion induced dipole. This ion has came, which is positive ion, and due to this particular ion, an induced dipole is present. Here 2 poles are present, this one is minus, this one is plus. So these 2 poles, this total compound is the result of this particular ion, so it is called ion induced dipole. Now here this one is not an ion, this is a well defined plus and minus, that means it is a dipole, and this was not a dipole. Okay, just let me do one thing, let us delete this out. So what we people have seen, this was not a dipole, but this is a defined dipole. Okay, again, when this particular dipole, this blue colored dipole, this is taken beside this particular neutral species, then what will happen? Same type of thing will happen. One side will be minus, another side will be plus. If this plus is at the right, then automatically the left will be minus. Like charges attract, unlike charges attract each other. Okay, this is called dipole induced dipole. Why? Because this dipole has induced this dipole moment in the neutral species. Okay, that's how it is. So let us see what we are seeing. We are seeing that this particular tendency, this whatever is happening here, is called polarizability. Okay, of the atom. Whose atom? This particular atom or this particular ion, the one who polarized the other. Okay. The created distortion of the electron cloud causes the original non-polar molecular atom to acquire a dipole moment. We have seen that yes, it is. These are acquiring dipole moment. Okay. Induced dipole moment related to polarizability of molecular atom and the strength of the electric field by the following equation. This particular equation is the equation of the induced dipole moment. That is mu induced. Mu is nothing but dipole moment equals to alpha into E. Now what is alpha? What is E? Alpha is polarizability in units of this, and E is nothing but the strength of electric field that is being applied. Okay, so that's how it is. Let's see what next. Okay, so here we are having the factors that influences the polarizability of a compound, right? What are the factors? Number one, before that, let us see what is written. This relationship between polarizability and the factors of electron density, atomic radii, and molecular orientation is as follows. Fine. Greater number of electrons, less control the nuclear charge has on the charge distribution, polarizability will be more. Now, this is 100% correct. See, basically, if a teacher doesn't have control, then what will happen? The students can disperse anywhere. They will move anywhere, they will run anywhere, they will do whatever they want, right? Similarly, the nucleus is the teacher in the atom. Now, if the nucleus is not having that much power, not having that much control, then what will happen? The electrons will be dispersed here and there. So automatically they will be attracted towards the other electrons or other atoms or molecules or ions. See, it is just same that you are sitting in a class. Suppose I am taking a class, you are sitting in a class, and some of your friend is passing by. Okay. Now, what will happen? If I am very much strong, you will not dare to look at your friend outside. But if I am not that much strong, then what will happen? You will definitely look outside to see what your friend is doing, or you may go outside to do the thing your friend is doing, to help him, to assist him, like to enjoy with him. But if I am strong, you will not dare to look at him. Going outside is a different issue. You will not dare it. Okay. So if there are large number of electrons, then what happens? Control becomes less. Yes. If there is a class of 30, control is more. If there is a class of 120, control will be less, because I will be unable to see the last persons who are sitting. Okay. Just relate this to your class, you will understand it better. Okay. There is a different issue that I don't stand in a place in a class. I rotate, used to revolve throughout the class. So in my class, whether it is 120 or strength is 180 or whatever it is, whatever the strength is, whether it is small and big, in my class this does not happen. Okay. But I am not an atom or molecule, so this particular phenomenon is not applicable for me. But this is an ideal example that we can use here. Okay. So if there are larger electrons, then what will happen? Polarizability will increase in a single word. Greater the distance of electrons from nuclear charge, less control, increased polarizability. This is another issue, that again, if the distance of the class is very high, then what will happen? From the front, the person will not be able to see at the back, so backside persons will do whatever they want. Okay. Molecular orientation with respect to the electric field can affect polarizability, except for molecules that are tetrahedral, octahedral, icosahedral. Okay. This factor is more important than for unsaturated molecules that contain areas of electron dense regions. Greatest polarizability in the molecules can be achieved when the electric field is anti-parallel to the molecule rather than perpendicular. Now, this is the third point, which is also very important to us. Why it is important? Because how the molecule has oriented itself, right? That is very important for polarizability. Now, question arises that how we are going to know it. See, there are certain molecules which have a permanent structure, just like tetrahedral, octahedral and all. But there are other molecules which can change their conformation, right? Newman, Sahars, people have studied actually. Okay, cis trans, right? Now, if the conformation is changed, then what will happen? It may happen that one structure is having electron density different from the other. In that case, the total system, the total polarization system will be disrupted or will be different from the one that is predicted. So what we can say? We can say that if the electric field is parallel, polarizability is good. If electric field is perpendicular, polarizability is not that good. Okay. Now, polarizability increases down a group because atomic size increases, larger electron clouds distort more easily. Polarizability decreases across period because effective nuclear charge is increasing. Cations are small parent atoms, less polarizable, and show more polarizability. That is the opposite trait. Okay. So this is how it is. It's quite clear to us. Let us go to the next slide, and our next topic is nothing but oxidation states. Okay. Now, what is oxidation and what is oxidation state? That we need to know. So what they are doing, they have come across an example, right? What that example is? They have taken this particular examples that we have screened here. Okay. What these people are saying? They're saying that let us take example of OF2 and Na2O to find out oxidation state. Okay. order of electronegativity of the three elements involved in these compounds is F greater than O greater than N. Now this is quite common. F is the most electronegative element of the periodic table, so it definitely will be greater electronegative than O, which is in turn greater electronegative than A, right? Each of the atoms of fluorine with outer electron configuration this shares one electron with oxygen in the OF2 molecule. Being highest electronegative element, fluorine has given oxidation state -1. So correspondingly, what will happen? Two fluorine atoms will be having -1, whereas the oxygen which is attached will be having +2. Now this is quite common. If oxygen and fluorine are there, then fluorine will get negative, oxygen will get positive. Okay, though oxygen doesn't like positive, but it will get positive. But if we see Na2O, right, in Na2O what happens? Na is electropositive, whereas oxygen is electronegative. Same thing will happen, but here what we are having, here the two sodium atoms will be having +1 charge because it is having 3s1 electron, which will lose to get the configuration of neon, whereas oxygen will get 2 electrons to get the configuration of neon, right? So oxygen will have -2 charge, and fluorine, sorry, not fluorine, this sodium will be having +2 charge, +1 charge each, right? Now the question arises, if we go for the molecule, this is whatever is written here. Let us see the definition, then we'll discuss something. Okay, oxidation state of an element in a particular compound can be defined as the charge acquired by its atom on the basis of electronegative consideration from the other atoms in the molecule. So we need to know which one is electronegative first, because depending on the electronegative atom only, the oxidation number can be calculated. So basically we'll see which one is electronegative, and then accordingly we'll calculate the oxidation number of the species. Okay, now whatever I was trying to say, that yes, we have seen that in OF2 fluorine is -1, oxygen is +2. In Na2O oxygen is -2 and sodium is +1. Now if somebody asks us that between OF2 and Na2O, which compound is more stable, what will say? What will say? We cannot say unless and until we understand. Okay, let us try to understand that under what conditions we can say which one is more stable, which one is less stable. If we go for OF2 molecule, oxygen is losing 2 electrons. Now oxygen has electronic configuration 1s2, 2s2, 2p4. If it loses 2 electrons, what will happen? 1s2, 2s2, 2p2. Highly unstable configuration. Okay, whereas fluorine gets 1 electron to get the configuration of neon, 1s2, 2s2, 2p6. So fluorine is happy, oxygen is extremely unhappy. Okay, whereas in Na2O, if we consider, oxygen is 1s2, 2s2, 2p4, it gets 2 electrons, but there is -2 to get 1s2, 2s2, 2p6. Configuration of neon, oxygen becomes happy, and sodium is 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s1. It loses 1 electron to get 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, again configuration of neon, so sodium is also happy. So in both these compounds we are having 3 atoms. In the first compound we are having 1 oxygen and 2 fluorine atoms. In the second compound we are having 1 oxygen and 2 sodium atoms. But in the first compound, fluorine is happy, oxygen is very unhappy. But in the second compound, all are happy. So it implies that second compound, that is Na2O, is much more stable compared to the first compound, which is OF2. Okay, so Na2O is more stable than OF2, right? Understood? So let us go to the next. Now, this particular slide comes with a new topic, which is called valency. Now, what is valency? Valency is nothing but a number. What type of number? It will clearly tell that how many electrons a particular element is having and how many electrons it can exchange in order to have a stable configuration. Why I am saying exchange? Because electron can be lost or electron can be gained. So it depends, right? Now if somebody is in group 1 means alkali metals, then number of valence electrons are 1 and the valency is also 1. Okay, because it will lose 1 electron, that's why valency is 1, number of valence electron 1 again. Next is 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. Up to this there is no problem. Why up to this there is no problem? Answer is quite simple. This particular group is nothing but carbon family. Up to this carbon family is considered as a what I can say as a benchmark, because here up to the left side of this particular thing we generally have the electropositive atoms, whereas to the right side we have the electronegative atoms. Okay, now if we go to this particular thing, valency is 3 5. If we consider, see, this is the electron filling system, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So here we are having no problem. This is group number, here also we are having no problem. But whenever we go for the valency 1 2 3, this is nothing but +1 +2 and +3. Okay, if we say this is not valence, this is valency, then you will see this one is nothing but, let us delete something, then it will be good for us. Deleted. Let us block this again and let us write, this is +1, this is +2, this is +3, 4 is 4, no plus no minus, can be both plus and minus. This is minus, this is minus, this is minus, rather we should say plus minus, plus minus, plus minus, and this is 8. Okay, why I'm saying plus minus, it can be -3 plus 5, this can be -2 plus 6, this can be -1 plus 7, and this can be 0 and 8. Okay, this is basically noble metal, so this particular group should not be considered. Which one I'm talking about? This one I'm talking about. Okay, right? Now if we go for the lower part, that is formula of hydride and formula of oxide. Now this one is very very important. Why important? Because we need to remember this out. Okay, now one, see, up to carbon is a different issue, right? Up to carbon we have hydride, hydride, hydride. This one is also hydride. Why hydride? Because here Li is electropositive, Ca is electropositive, Al is electropositive. But after this we are not having hydrides, we are having hydrogen ions. Why? Because here phosphorus, nitrogen, oxygen, these are electronegative. This fluorine also, right? Similarly, here also acidic oxides, basic oxides are there. This particular group is a benchmark again. These basically are neutral oxides. If we go to this particular thing, we have basic oxides, whereas if we go to this particular wing, we are having the acidic oxides. Okay, so SO3, ACO3, TeO3, AS2O3, Cl2O7, these are all acidic oxides, whereas K2O, Na2O, CaO, these are all basic oxides, right? So you need to understand this, that which one is acidic oxide, which one is basic oxide. Now why I am saying this, because without proper understanding, you see, it is not possible for you to remember. It is possible for me to also remember that which one is oxide, which oxide is acidic, which oxide is basic, because there are a large number of oxides, okay, or large number of hydrogens. But what we can do, we can see who is the partner. By seeing the partner of hydrogen and oxygen, we can clearly predict whether it will be acidic or basic, whether it will be hydrogen or hydrides. Okay, let's go to the next topic. And the last but not least, we have got the topic of effective nuclear charge. Okay, what is effective nuclear charge? We need to see. Concept of effective nuclear charge, denoted by Z effective, relates to the net positive charge experienced by an electron in a multi-electron atom. The term effective is used because the shielding effect of the negatively charged inert electrons prevents the higher orbital electrons from experiencing the full nuclear charge due to the repelling effect of the lower inert layer reactions. Okay, in the atom with one electron, that electron experiences the full charge on positive nucleus. In case the effective nuclear charge can be calculated from Coulomb's law. So let us do Coulomb's law later on. Just try to understand first that what is effective nuclear charge. This is quite important for us to know that what is effective nuclear charge. It's very simple. Thing is that all the neutrons are present in the nucleus. So whatever charge has been faced from the nucleus, it is actually the combined effect of all the protons that are present inside the nucleus, right? So as they're doing it combinedly, it is called effective nuclear charge, number one. Number two is as the shielding effect is considered, so it is called effective nuclear charge. Okay. Now it can be for the electron that experiences full charge from the nucleus. That means for a neutral atom, it can be used. It can be done using Coulomb's law. However, in an atom with many electrons, outer electrons are attracted to the positive nucleus and repelled by the inner negative electron. This is nothing but shielding effect. Okay. The effective nuclear charge for an electron is given by Z effective is equal to Z minus S. What is S? S is nothing but the shielding effect, and Z is nothing but the number of protons present in the nucleus. This is given by Slatter's rule. Slatter's rule is not in our syllabus, so we are not doing that. If you want to know what is Slatter's rule, you just consult with me and I'll discuss it. Okay. Now, here some more things are given. See, this particular, this is basically a question type of thing. Arrange the electrons into a sequence of groups in order of increasing principal quantum numbers. Okay, fine. These are the things given. So any electron higher in the sequence to the electron under consideration contributes to the shielding. Okay. So for NS or NP, 0.35 becomes from each of the electron within the same group except for the 1s group, where the other electron contributes only 3 points. See, you may think that from where this data I am getting 0.35, 0.3, 0.851, from where this data I am getting. It is quite common. If I were in your place, I would have asked the same. Thing is that these are actually experimental data that are obtained from the experimental database, that is a book, right? These are the normal data for shielding effect, okay, whatever people are having. So that we have incorporated here. Okay, so if a question comes about this data will be given to you, otherwise you will not unable to answer. Okay, so what we can see that the contribution of NS is 0.35 and NP is 0.30, whereas if we go for some other shells, contribution becomes 0.85 and 0.85 and 1. Okay, now 1 for each electron closer to the atom to the group. Okay, this includes electron with same principal quantum number but in S or P orbitals, right? Okay, now what we are having, see, now as you can see, a little bit calculation of Slatter's rule has been given, and here you can see what the table is like that. I already told you that this is the experimental data that is obtained, right? So this data we can see here, and for S block and for P block, the values of each and every element has been provided here. Okay, so no need to remember this. Again, I am saying if the question comes about this data will be provided to you. Okay, so this was all about the lecture that we are having today, and here in this lecture we have clearly seen that what the meaning of oxidation number is, what is effective nuclear charge, and some other topics also people have discussed in this lecture, right? So that's all for today's lecture. Let us meet in the next lecture, that is a full and final, the last lecture of periodic properties. Okay, so till then, stay safe, stay healthy, and be safe, right? Study periodic table. Okay, thank you so much. Let us meet in the next lecture.